Now I'd like to show you where you can access location data. And not only just, location data that you can utilize, but location data that can be utilized for free. ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World is a great place to start for those of you who are interested in using content or pre-configured maps, apps, and data layers to support your work. You can come in here and search, and as a part of our browse option, you'll be able to find information on boundaries, people, and the environment alongside many other data sets available through ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World. As a part of this, we also have many apps, and Living Atlas is a great place for you to find these apps that are available both locally and globally. This first example of an application we've built is called Indicators of the Planet, and it was released at Esri UC at our user conference in July. And you'll be able to utilize this to understand what is happening around the world on a daily basis. And you can find out, what has been happening today, this month, last week on some of the key topics that are facing our world today, such as wildfire, conservation, and deforestation. And what this does, it really provides a heartbeat of what is happening to help us to understand where we should put our resources and act. As you see today, air quality, we have over 1,300 locations around the world which have poor air quality. And this has actually increased by 20% in the last 24 hours. We can see that in the last month, we are the number 3 lowest since August of 1979 for Arctic sea ice. We can also see that we have over 3,800 armed conflicts happening, and this has increased this week. The number of events have actually increased by 2,600 events. So it gives you this big picture of what is happening around the world, and it actually invites you to go in and say, that's interesting. I want to actually go back to Living Atlas and I want to search to find more data so that I can then go and develop information products that can help me to make better decisions. Now, one of the information products around wildfire that we've created is actually going to be very informative for those of us who are in California at this time. It's going to indicate with this data, it will indicate to us where the wildfires are occurring and also how many acres are estimated to have burned and what percent are contained. And I don't know about you, but when I take a look at this information, it's very frightening to see that whole West Coast lit up in orange. But as we understand, what is currently happening with our wildfire and how our natural environment is currently responding to these disasters, we can start to predict what might happen in the future and how we can better service these areas to protect ourselves so that we do not continue to have such terrible events happening to all of our communities. And so again, you can even look by size, right? You can see the size of the wildfire, and that's really the power of looking at this in a map. You can see that we have large, almost 400,000 acreage burned versus maybe some of the smaller ones, which are maybe happening like over here in Dallas versus what might be happening in California. So this information, again, helps us to know where to act, how to act, but again, it begs more questions, right? So from all of these wildfires, what is happening is that we have poor air quality. And so this app, as a part of the Living Atlas, is exploring air quality. Again, another free resource for you to go and explore and to play around with, to look at your neighborhood. And we can start to look at, okay, given the communities of which we're looking at, what is the air quality index and what is it currently? What is the forecast? And how do we respond? We also take a look at wind speed. So again, the value of layering different data sets together here. So we're looking not only at air quality, we're also looking at wind speed to understand, where is the air coming from? And again, if we think about those fires, that also helps us to understand if the air quality is poorer because of us having a situation where there might be a fire nearby. We also can look at population here and see who is most at risk. And to be honest, what adds tremendous value is looking at this from a national average to understand, where do we sit? Where does your neighborhood sit in comparison with other parts of the US? And if it's poor, what do we need to do to protect you and to make it better? And if it's great, what can we do to keep it that way? So as we scale around this map, we are seeing different results happening. And in some places, it is saying air pollution poses little or no risk. So that to us says we want to keep it that way. This area that we're highlighting in Utah, we don't want it to turn into some of these areas that we are seeing towards Los Angeles that have not so good air quality, right? It's classified as unhealthy. And so we have to have that fine balance of knowing how to allocate those resources, and utilizing this location data in an information tool is going to tell us again how best to act to solve these problems. Another application that you can access in Living Atlas is called Sea Ice Aware. And for those of you who are particularly concerned with global warming, this might be one that you really would want to check out. What it does is it takes a look at the sea ice extent from 1979 all the way to current. And we can take a look at the ice when it's at its fullest extent versus when it's at its minimal extent. And then we can compare that and see how it's changed over the years. So here we're looking at 1979, and now we're looking at 2019. So we can see that effective change, and we can see how it changes over a long period of time. And as we do that, again, we can start to make predictions of if we're following a certain curve, and these are the monthly changes that we see throughout the current year and the past years, what will it be like if we continue on in this direction? So we can see this general slope here of the sea ice extent actually going down. In 2012, actually, we see it at its lowest. It did spring back up in 2013, so that's really good to see. But we haven't really gotten all the way back up to where we have been in previous years, such as 1996, or even all the way back to 1979. And you can take a look at this for both Arctic sea ice and Antarctic sea ice as well. So this helps you to see the changes on both ends of the globe. And again, this is really just meant to get your mind going. It's really meant to help you see where there might be some opportunities for us to intervene, and to think about, okay, based on this information, how can we utilize this data with the Arctic sea ice, and how can we perhaps work with this information in other ways? And what is actually beautiful is that this story map was created by Old Dominion University utilizing NOAA data and Esri story maps tools. And they're looking at coastal flooding. So if we look back at Sea Ice Aware, we see, okay, we've got sea ice melting. When that melts, it's obviously going to become water. And when it becomes water, we start to see flooding. So what will that flooding look like for us over the years? Now, this, as I had mentioned earlier, story maps are a great way for us to tell a story. Here it's bringing in pictures as well as charts and other facts for us to get a full picture of why does this matter? And why should we care as we look through it? So I do invite you all to check out this resource and to get the full story and to understand the full intention of the story map. But for the purpose of this demo, I want to point out to this map that was done for Norfolk, Virginia. And what they did is they took a look at the waterfront area, which is home to the world's largest naval base. And they wanted to see if we had a sea level rise of at least 3 feet, what would that mean for the city and how would it be impacted? So we can start to see, and this brings in NOAA's flood inundation data over this high resolution imagery. So again, you're layering things to see how it correlates with one another, right? And we're actually able to see the buildings that might come under threat as we start to see this sea level rise. And so we see this right now as it stands, and then we can continue that prediction. So this is 2040 with sea level rise, and we start to see buildings show up in red. These red buildings are representing the highest risk, followed by orange, which will be impacted by tidal flooding events, and then the yellow, which will have some moderate impact from the flooding event. So we can kind of see a range of how that rise, if we continue to rise at 3 feet, how that will affect this area. And it actually continues on to 2060, where it starts to get a little scary, right? And we're suddenly seeing that this whole area here is going to be underwater. We see bridges and a downtown tunnel that are going to be threatened. And it starts to make us wonder, what is the high risk and what can we do to better help the area? We also continue on. So this is 20 years later. This is in 2080. If we continue to see a sea level rise, and if it were to be at 3 feet and continue on in that way, this is where we stand, right? We see that the risk is high, and we know that it's going to make a dramatic change to the areas there. Again, the boundaries are going to change. The sea levels will change how the world and the populations are able to interact with this area. And so from this, again, we're able to make those decisions. We'll know where we need to put in levees. We'll know where we need to make those evacuations, because we're able to predict over time what needs to change so that we can survive as a society and make the best decisions moving forward. Now, another resource and app from the Living Atlas is called Esri Maps for Public Policy. And this, again, is a free resource. It is built for those of you that want to make a difference in your community, whether you are a government official or just a really enthusiastic community member who wants to make that difference. And you need data, you need information to help make that change. What you can do is come into Esri Maps for Public Policy, and you can take a look at a variety of different topics that matter most to you. And right now we're looking at overall homelessness in 2019 with the point in time count. We can see the differences of Los Angeles from Glendale and Burbank area to Pasadena. And maybe we love this and we want to share it. So it's very easily shareable. You can copy the link here, even share right to Twitter or Facebook. It will email to friends, family, government officials as you wish. And you can share this information with them and share with, okay, the facts are here. This is how it's affecting our area, and this is what it means to me. So when we go through, there's also topics such as drug poisoning and overdose rates. We can see that there's also economic opportunities such as education and poverty, urban development. We also have transportation and infrastructure to give you a look at this. This is going to actually take a look at where our renewables, our water, our electricity. We can look at resilience and sustainability to understand how our our areas are doing in terms of climate, smart planning, emergency management. We can also look at forestry and endangered species, agriculture, as well as public safety to understand crime, flood, and all of the coordination that goes into making a safe community. When you are searching around this, I do encourage you to explore different areas. So if you are interested in knowing if you're interested in knowing how your area compares to another community, you can actually zoom right in and take a look, right? So we can get real close and real friendly with this map here, and we can take a look at our young adults 25 to 34 more likely to own or rent. Now we can look right here, perhaps over here by Beverly Hills, and we can see that we do have quite the influx here where suddenly we have the yellow showing up, or owner households whose householder is 25 to 34 is very common. But then right next to it, it's actually very common for people to be renters. So we can perhaps use this data to understand where we might need more affordable housing, where we might need more opportunities for people to access rent or home ownership in these areas. And it's actually very interesting to look at this model versus what we just looked at for homelessness, and to understand where there's certain areas, again, where we need to intervene. So again, this is called Maps for Public Policy. It's a free resource. It's available to you to make decisions with location data, authoritative location data for you and your community. Now we also have the COVID-19 Dashboard from Johns Hopkins University, and likely you have seen this. It did hit the news waves. Everyone's really been focused in on this to help us to understand what has been happening with COVID-19 on a world view. I do want to point out that not only has Esri worked on this with Johns Hopkins University, but we also have a COVID-19 hub, which is filled with resources, many free resources for you to use for maps and solutions for response and reopening. And when you come onto this hub, you'll actually find a variety of examples of different maps and dashboards, but you're going to also find data. And this location data, again, it's coming from some authoritative sources as well as commercial sources, and it's going to help you to see and answer some of those questions that we're having beyond just how many cases of viruses are out there. We also have things such as school district reopening and COVID-19 testing. We can look at what are the predominant household incomes, right? And how does a predominant household incomes where someone is having more money, more financial stability compare to an area where they're less financially stable? And what does that look like when we overlay, the COVID data on top of that? We can look at the different racial and economic equity groups, again, to understand where these disparities are and where people need more help. Are they likely to go and seek help? Are they likely to go get tested? All of these questions, they really start to surface. And I think as you start to scroll around all this data that's available here, all this free data that's available here, it's really going to help your mind to wrap around all the questions that we can answer about COVID-19. And what's beautiful is that we have people working all over the world. So you'll find a global map gallery. People all over the world are contributing their apps and their dashboards into this map gallery so that we all can learn from each other and we all can build together. Some great examples. One of this one was also made by Esri. It's called the COVID Pulse. And with COVID Pulse, you're actually able to see, what is the heartbeat of COVID-19 and how has the rates of new cases fluctuated over time. And so we can see some real big upticks, such as here in Montana. I mean, there's a giant jump here. Same thing with North Dakota. But then we also see areas where it's more of a plateau, right? Indiana's more of a plateau. Ohio's more of a plateau. Up here in New York, we had a big jump at first and then it dropped back down to a plateau. So you can click into it and get real friendly with the data, and even, zoom in and understand your region, your capita, what's happening there. We'll cruise on over to California as this is the LA Data Summit. And we're able then to look at more, smaller geographies of population and to start to understand, okay, in Fresno, we have a population of 999,000. There's 443 new cases and 18 deaths in the past 7 days. And so again, we've seen a large spike there, but it's actually had a large drop. So we can see that perhaps what they're doing there is working. However, we can still see that the trend is in epidemic. While others here in Kings, California, it's more of a spreading. So it hasn't actually reached that academic or epidemic. We can see here emergent, so just early stages of the outbreak into spreading into what we would say is an epidemic, and then as it starts to go through controlled stages and end stages, and then no cases. So we do see lots of fluctuations as we look at the US. But again, this information source is there for you to explore, to utilize in your own research, and also for you to share. We also have this map on how many households do not have internet. And this one is so interesting because as we look at it and we start to think about this, households with no internet access, it to us says, how can we adjust to this new world where everything is virtual if our homes do not have internet access? So we have this percent with no internet access, and households that do have internet access, and then also the total cases of confirmed COVID that we can look at. And again, it's great to look at it from the US level, but we just want to be able to get down and get into the information as it makes sense to us, and to be able to explore our communities and understand our counties and how they differ. So we do see that there are different cases here, of where people are going to have access to internet with high percentages without internet access. And then we have lower areas with no internet access. So with this information, it's beyond the map. It's beyond just, making some assumptions. It's actually bringing in authoritative data, and it's helping us to understand, again, where do we need to act? In these areas where there is no internet access, suddenly we're able to make decisions on how to help them and how to be a better world.